example of 629. So I have my various costs and my various activity levels. What we're doing is the high-low method. So if you look at the paper I sent you for the exercise example, it says, number 1 says, use the high-low method to estimate the company's energy cost behavior and express it in equation format. So what you look at is your highest activity level. Our highest activity level is 12,000 units. Our cost at that activity level is 13,500. Our lowest activity level is 4,000 units. Our cost at that activity level is 7,500. So what you do is you take your highest activity level, subtract your lowest activity level to determine your change in activity. So 12,000 minus 4,000 is 8,000. You take your cost at that highest activity level, in our case that would be 13,500. You subtract your cost at the lowest activity level, in our case that is 7,500. And the change, 13,500 minus 7,500, is $6,000. So now we're ready to determine our variable cost element. We simply take the change in cost, remember that was 6,000, and divide it by our change in activity, which was 8,000. If you divide that out, our variable cost per unit is 75 cents. The first question is saying, the first question says, use the high-low method to estimate the company's energy cost behavior and express it in equation form. So we know our cost at the highest activity level is 13,500. We're going to subtract out the variable cost element. To determine that, let's look at our activity level. Our highest activity level is 12,000 units. 12,000 times that 75 cents is 9,000. 13,500 minus 9,000 is 4,500. That is our fixed cost element. So we're going to set it up in equation form. It's going to be y equals 4,500, the fixed cost element, plus 75 cents, or it's actually, it shows 0.75x, the variable cost element. So that's how we would determine number 1. Now let's go to number 2. And in number 2, it's asking us to predict the cost if 30,000 units are produced. Our variable cost is going to be that 30,000 units multiplied by 75 cents, and that is going to be 22,500. We already know our fixed cost element, right? We determined it down here. It's 4,500. So our total cost at a 30,000 activity level is $27,000. So that's how you're going to determine number 2. I'm going to talk really quickly about variable and fixed costs and how they behave. So let's look at, we're going to have a cost, we'll look at variable cost first. Say our cost per unit is $10. And our activity level, let's say, is 100. And we're going to look at our total variable cost. So we're doing variable first. In variable cost, your cost per unit is constant. It does not change. As your activity level changes, your total variable cost will change. So at $10 per unit times 100 units, our total cost is 1,000. Remember, our cost per unit doesn't change. So if our activity level was 200 units, our total variable cost is 2,000. You simply multiply the cost per unit times the activity level. This is all within a relevant range. So for variable costs, if you go outside the relevant range, this data will not hold true any longer. So for example, if I can, I'm making a chair, and if I can buy my fabric for $10 per item, and they tell me, you know what, if you buy a minimum of 10,000 items, we'll drop your cost per unit to $8. I have gone outside of my relevant range, and my data changes. Okay. Now let's look at fixed costs. Let's assume we're renting an x-ray machine, and the cost of that x-ray machine is $5,000. And let's say we perform 5,000 x-rays. Our cost per unit is $1. fixed costs work exactly the opposite as variable costs. Our total fixed cost does not change, but as our activity level changes, our cost per unit will change. So let's say I perform 1,000 x-rays. My cost per unit now is $5. This, again, is within a relevant range. So if I go outside the relevant range, my cost data doesn't hold true. So let's say the maximum on this machine, the maximum x-rays I can perform is 10,000 and I need to perform 18. I would have to run 2 x-rays machines. So my total cost is now 10,000. I've gone outside the relevant range. So remember that information just if you're trying to determine any fixed and variable costs on your own, and this basically always holds true. Okay, that's it for this first example, 629.